To James Comey, it wants to handle the whole day. When will it end? Good morning, everybody, on a Friday. Special day today. I'm Bill Hammer. Welcome here to America's Newsroom. How you doing?
Good morning to you, Bill. Good to see you. I'm Martha McCallum. President-elect Donald Trump reacting to the news with a Twitter tear of epic proportion. Check this out. He says, what are Hillary Clinton's people complaining about with respect to the FBI? Based on the information they had, she should never have been allowed to run. Guilty as hell, he writes. They were very nice to her. She lost because she campaigned in the wrong states. No enthusiasm, exclamation point.
Big morning for you ahead. Peter Doocy, reaction from Mr. Trump. Chris Steyerwalt on the politics of all this. But we begin with Catherine Harris there and live in Washington. And let's start with a reaction from the FBI. Catherine, what do you have?
Well, thank you, Bill, and good morning. The investigation's principal focus is FBI Director Comey and whether he broke the rules when he sent a letter to Congress 11 days before the election, since there's a long-standing policy against taking action that might influence voters. Director Comey notified Congress he was reopening the Clinton case after a separate FBI investigation found Clinton emails on Anthony Weiner's computer. The emails belonged to his estranged wife and Clinton aide, Huma Abedin. The Inspector General is also investigating Comey's decision to make a public statement after Clinton's FBI interview that there was evidence of potential violations for mishandling classified information, but he said no reasonable prosecutor would take the case. On Capitol Hill this week, Comey said that he acts independently.
I hope I've demonstrated by now I'm tone deaf when it comes to politics, and that's the way it should be.
The FBI director issued this statement late yesterday that he's grateful for the review and that he hopes the findings will eventually be public, Bill.
So is Loretta Lynch and the Justice Department also under the microscope now, Catherine, because of this?
Well, that's right. Investigators are also probing whether Justice Department official Peter Kadzig, a longtime friend of Clinton's campaign manager John Podesta, broke the rules when the two men met socially during the investigation. Leaked documents suggest Kadzig also tipped off the Clinton campaign about email releases and congressional hearings. The press release from the Inspector General yesterday makes no mention of Attorney General Lynch's meeting with Bill Clinton 1 week before Hillary Clinton's FBI interview. It was the catalyst for Lynch's decision to rely on the FBI director's recommendation, because the tarmac meeting created the appearance of a conflict. Though Lynch insisted to Congress that conversation was not work-related.
The former president indicated he wanted to say hello, and I agreed to say hello, and we had a social conversation. Nothing of any relationship to the email investigation was discussed, nor were any specific cases or matters before the Department of Justice discussed.
Asked if the IG is investigating that meeting, a spokesman would not go beyond the public statement, but left open that possibility. But it's important for context that the Lynch-Clinton meeting, FBI Director Comey's supporters say, really boxed him in and led to that chain of events last summer, Bill.
Wow, Catherine Harris leading our story there this morning. Thank you in Washington.
You're welcome.
Martha.
That's where it all began. So let's get more on this and how the president-elect is reacting this morning. Peter Doocy, live at Trump Tower. So, Peter, does the president-elect think that the DOJ internal investigation could hurt him at all?
Not based on what he's been saying this morning, Martha. In fact, the president-elect thinks that looking beneath the surface is actually going to backfire on Democrats trying to damage him, as they did. Any to the quote are Hillary Clinton's people complaining about with respect to the FBI. Based on the information they had, she should never have been allowed to run. Guilty as hell. They were very nice to her. She lost because she campaigned in the wrong states. No enthusiasm. And that mirrors the point that transition officials have been making for weeks as the campaign gets further and further away and the inauguration gets closer and closer. They don't think Mr. Trump had help from any outside forces. They think that they went on their own based on picking spots to campaign in the final days better than the other side. Martha?
Well, the drama goes on with all of this. More on that coming up this morning. But in the meantime, Peter, in terms of the hearings that we've been watching throughout the course of this week, is the president-elect concerned that some of these cabinet nominees are using very different language in some cases and stronger language in some cases when it comes to Russia at these confirmation hearings?
No, and we know that they're watching here at Trump Tower as these cabinet nominees go before the Senate committees trying to get confirmed to serve in the Trump cabinet, in the Trump White House. But even as some of these nominees are warning about Russia and explaining what they would do with their new power to protect the United States against Russia, the president-elect, who says that he hopes to improve ties, said this morning: all of my cabinet nominees are looking good and doing a great job. I want them to be themselves and express their own thoughts, not mine. And the way that a transition official phrased it in a call with reporters yesterday, they put it like this: he's not asking for clones. He's asking for people to go out there because of their expertise to come in and share it with him. And a final point about Russia, the president-elect says that his team is going to have a report about hacking or alleged hacking or interference within 90 days. Martha.
Look forward to that. Peter, thank you.
This FBI story came up with a question to the White House about whether or not its fingerprints are all over this story. First, you will hear from Josh Earnest, and then Charles Krauthammer has his take. Watch here.
I can tell you that the White House was not involved in that decision, and anything the Inspector General chooses to investigate is something that he will do, he or she will do, based on their own view of the situation, based on their own knowledge of the facts.
It looks as if the Democrats, on their way out the door, are trying to leave behind as many landmines as they can.
Don't step on one. Here's Stirewalt now. How you doing, Chris? Good morning to you, digital politics editor there. You think Comey welcomes this investigation? In what sense?
Lord, yes. He needs this. The FBI has not exactly been covered in glory for the past 6 months. Republicans and Democrats alike have both had moments, cause to say you're cooking the books, and the reversal, the flip-flop on this thing was one of the most astonishing things I've ever seen. So Comey needs some clarity here, and also we would remember that the American public is well served, generally speaking, by robust inspectors general. That's how we found out things at the IRS. That's how we find out things at other agencies, is that these offices go through. And if I have ever seen a case where things looked like they were mixed up, it's on this one, and so this probably makes sense.
Well, what about Krauthammer's point about leaving these landmines? Do you agree with that? Do you see that? And if so, on this specific story, how big of a landmine could this be? Or not? Well,
we have to remember that there's two categories here. There's what the Inspector General does, and all we can do is take these robust Inspectors General. Remember, the Obama administration tried to rein in Inspectors General. We have to take the Inspector General at his word that he is trying to get to the bottom of this so that he can find out exactly what happened. Then there's a question about what Democrats do with it and whether or not they try to impute illegitimacy onto Donald Trump's presidency by what the finding is. I understand why Trump would not be happy about this. I understand why he would be tweeting about this, because he knows that if the Inspector General comes back and says that James Comey screwed up and that this was a big mess and that all this stuff, Democrats will say, here's another reason why Hillary Clinton lost. But let me say this, and I think this is missed in all of it, Brother Hemmer, which is he won. Nothing will make him unwin. A week from today, he will take the oath of office. He will be the president of the United States. Democrats are rolling around this thing like a dog and a dead deer. They can't stop themselves. It's time, people. For a million reasons, Hillary Clinton lost the election. It's over.
I think for a lot of people, it will never be over.
Yeah,
I think for a lot of people, it will not be over until 2020. And I think as we head to Washington next week to see you and all of our friends there and colleagues at the Bureau, that's what we're going to find also. There will be people, for as long as Mr. Trump is in the White House, who will not view him as their president. We've seen that already, Chris.
And there were Republicans who did the same thing to Barack Obama, and we are in a gross chapter of our national history where politics and partisanship overrides patriotism to a degree that is unacceptable for the health of the republic, period.
See you in D.C. next week. Thank you, sir. Have a good weekend. Chris Stirewalt in D.C. In a moment here, we'll talk to Jason Chaffetz. He has led the investigation of the Clinton email scandal. We'll talk to him about that live in about 30 minutes here on America's Newsroom. We've got a few things to talk to him about, so stay tuned for that coming up momentarily. Divided country, to a degree. I think we would all agree on that, right?
It's going to take an extraordinary amount of leadership to overcome some of that rancor that is out there, and whether or not Donald Trump can do that is part of the job that lies ahead of him. So lots more to come this morning as we talk about the repeal of Obamacare, expected to take another step towards completion later today. The House is expected to take up a bill which would help Republicans block Democratic efforts to filibuster an Obamacare vote. The Senate passed this measure yesterday. President-elect Trump tweeting about it, saying this, quote, "Congrats to the Senate for taking the first step to #repeal Obamacare. Now it's on to the House." In a separate tweet, he wrote this, tweet, tweet, tweet. "The Unaffordable Care Act will soon be history," says the future president.
We watch that Twitter feed every morning at 6:30 because then they start to dribble out. Watch the vote today in the House.
Yep.
See how many Republican defectors they have. Is it sizable or not? We'll see that today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lexicon we never would have seen in our old tapes from years ago.
Yes.
We're talking about Twitter every 2 seconds, but it's now part of exactly the way we all communicate. So
right on.
Get used to it.
In many ways, it is Donald Trump versus the intelligence community. Allegations that Democrats are cheering for the CIA for taking on the incoming administration. Are they trying to derail Mr. Trump before he takes office? We'll talk to the Trump camp about that. Reaction from both sides in a moment coming up here.
Intrigue there. Plus, raising the flag in the nation's capital for the men and women in blue. How the Stars and Stripes are honoring police officers in the face of this painting, which has sparked an incredible controversy.
Ongoing story there. Also, there is daylight between the President-elect Trump and some of his nominees over issues like Russia, Vladimir Putin, how they are not reading from the same page so far, and what Mr. Trump has to say about that. Ultimately, what does this mean for the incoming administration? First General James Mattis from yesterday.
I'm all for engagement, but we also have to recognize reality and what Russia is up to, and there's a decreasing number of areas where we can engage cooperatively, and an increasing number of areas where we're going to have to confront Russia.
The battle over a painting depicting some police officers as pigs has taken another turn on Capitol Hill today. A Blue Lives Matter flag is now flying above this controversial artwork, which was done by a student and entered into a competition. Democratic Congressman Lacey Clay originally hung that painting after that competition. Republicans have removed it several times. There's been a tug of war going on over it, but the Missouri congressman keeps putting it back up. So that's the latest on that one for now.
Accusations of unpatriotic behavior on the part of some Democrats. Glenn Greenwald telling Tucker Carlson that the Democrats are hoping, some of them, that the intel community does undermine the incoming administration before Mr. Trump takes office. This is what he said last night on Tucker's program.
Democrats at this point, even liberals, more or less openly calling for and cheering for the intervention of the CIA, the intelligence community, the overall deep state, hoping that because they failed to do so, that this unelected faction in Washington will undermine and subvert and destroy the legitimacy of Donald Trump's presidency before he's even inaugurated. And I think what you're seeing is actually quite dangerous. There really is, at this point, obvious open warfare.
Well, is that true? Dennis Ross, congressman out of Florida, member of the Trump transition team. Sir, how are you? And good morning to you there in Capitol Hill.
Good morning.
It's a strong charge, and I think if it is true, it is very dangerous. You live in that town. You work there. Is it true?
Well, I'm sure they're trying to do everything they can to disrupt and distract the legitimacy of this president. Bill, let's go back to October 18th when this President Obama, told Donald Trump that there was nothing about this Russian hacking. Quit your whining, go out and get votes. Now all of a sudden we're here. Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden put it well last Friday when the Democrats tried to disrupt the counting of the electors in the Electoral College when he said it's over. Every attempt at this point, including attacking the intelligence community, will be pursued to try to delegitimize Donald Trump's presidency. I don't believe there's anything to it. We don't need to politicize our intelligence community. Thank God we've got good people going in those new directorships. And you know, it pains me to see this, but I understand the political nature of what we do.
But again, sir, do you think this is this legitimate, the point that Greenwald makes there?
You know, on behalf of some Democrats, on behalf of those on the left, they probably firmly believe that that's the case. I don't think so, and I guess I just don't want to believe it, Bill, because I have so much hope and promise for the future of our country and this new president. To think that they attack the intelligence community, to say that now the intelligence community was complicit in these elections, is really stretching it. I mean, even Podesta tried to influence the electors. Undersecretary Patrick Kennedy tried to get the CIA to not or to wipe the server of Hillary Clinton. You know, this is a practice that's been going on. Nobody knows better right now than this current administration whether they can influence it that way. And if there is truth to it, you know, we need to.
No question about that. Yeah, listen to two more points in this. Greenwald believes that an incoming Trump administration, where they're being aggressive with the intelligence community, that they're a threat to the CIA's control over decision making.
Right.
Is there truth to that, sir?
I would say no, and I'll tell you why. My good friend, my colleague, Mike Pompeo, is about as high integrity of a public servant this country will ever see. Top of his class at West Point, top of his class in Harvard. He is a man, a successful small businessman. He will clean house in the CIA. This president-elect didn't look for yes men. We saw that yesterday in the confirmation hearings of General Mattis and of Mike Pompeo and Rex Tillerson. These are people that are going to come forward and preserve the integrity of the institution of the intelligence community and bring it back together so that we can be that dominant power throughout the world that other countries, other free countries are looking forward to seeing.
Got it. And the final point on that, I appreciate what you're saying about your colleagues there and their testimony this past week. Does the president-elect have some sort of responsibility to change this tone as well come January 20th?
Absolutely. You know, look at the last 8 years. Look at where we are. I mean, look how divided this country is. It's all as a result of leadership. A true leader will unify. And you saw President-elect Trump on election night begin unifying this country. We still got a week to go. But I think you'll see a united country, an optimal, if we have never seen years, big January 20th.
Dennis Ross, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
1 week away. Thank you for being here today. 20 minutes now past the hour. Thank you, sir.
Fox News alert now. A major ice storm is heading for the Midwestern states today, and the effects will continue into this weekend. Road crews are having a tough time preparing for this freezing rain and sleet, but everybody is clearing out the shelves of the grocery store.
Get
What's
ready.
this?
Right. Also, the co-owner of LL Bean dodging criticism for her support of the Trump campaign. The president-elect now responding to that criticism on Twitter. That's next.
Definitely a double standard, and you know, they're victimized. Both these guys won. Obama won, and Trump won. My cousin's candidate, my candidate. Your cousin. But I'm the one that's being targeted and vilified and asked to be taken off the board.
Next level layering. Potential for a serious ice storm. It could cause major power outages and some dangerous road conditions from Texas and the south all the way up to my beloved Las Vegas. Comes first, and they expect it to continue throughout the weekend. So look out. You've been warned.
I'm not going to back down. I never back down. If I feel I'm right, and I do feel that they're bullies, that's all they are. What are your friends? Small kernel of hardcore bullies out on the West Coast in California trying to control what we do, what we buy, what we sell in Maine.
Don't mess with folks from Maine. That's the co-owner of LL Bean responding to criticism of her political support for President-elect Donald Trump. Linda Bean donated thousands of dollars to the campaign and to a PAC that was called Making Maine Great Again. Mr. Trump now using Twitter to promote the company, tweeting this: "Thank you to Linda Bean of LL Bean for your great support and courage. People will support you even more now. Buy LL Bean," he says, wondering how much impact that has on their bottom line. Joining me now, Maria Bartiromo, host of Maria's Mornings with Maria on Fox Business Network and Sunday Morning Features right here on Fox News Channel. Maria, good morning to you.
Hey, Martha.
It's fascinating. You know, I mean, you can't blame him. It's sort of a natural reaction to want to support her for supporting him. Does it have an impact?
Well, look, first of all, I will say this. I saw a huge impact on my Twitter feed, even before he tweeted. As soon as we had Linda Bean on yesterday, all of my viewers on the Fox Business Network started tweeting, saying, "I'm going right now, and I'm going to buy LL Bean stuff. I haven't gotten the catalog in a while. I just called and got the catalog. Go Linda Bean." So there was a huge reaction from viewers followers who saw her as somebody who they wanted to support. Then Donald Trump comes out with the tweet. Those followers got behind him. However, there were people who said to him, wait a second, that's not right. You're supporting somebody who's part of a super PAC. You're not supposed to be doing that. So he did get criticized. But certainly, look, she is somebody who is allowed to get behind a political, person. And she's the granddaughter. She's not even working at LL Bean. She's just on the board. So it is a little outrageous that there's this boycott developing.
It's interesting because apparently the Bean family in the past has supported Democrat candidates, and they weren't punished for that by the GOPers who wanted their bean boots and their flannel shirts and all the good stuff that you can get at El Bean. They even sell maple syrup up there. It's an amazing place.
She said her uncle supported Obama, okay? And she said, look, Obama won and Trump won. So what? We support winners. But, it's just, you hate when politics gets involved in this stuff.
So what about the impact? What about him sort of inserting himself in business? Because that's the larger discussion here that's happening with these auto companies and now with LL Bean, because I'm sure the Land's End folks are like, what about us,
It
right?
really is. It really is. And look, all I could say to that is right now he's not president. This is the lead up. So
you think he's going to change when he's president?
I don't know. I think somebody has to be telling him you can't take a side when you're the president of the entire country. So we'll see if that changes.
Good luck to that person.
Good luck to that person, and good luck to that. I mean, you would think that he's not going to change just from what we've seen already.
Yeah.
However, I would find it hard to believe if he doesn't dial it back a little when talking about individual companies, because you don't want the president of the United States calling out individual companies that's actually moving their
Are they
stock.
publicly traded?
LL Bean is not. It's a private company.
Well, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
In terms of George Soros, front page story in the Wall Street Journal this morning that he lost $1 billion trying to basically short sell a Trump victory.
Yeah, I mean, he, along with some others like Mark Cuban, basically said if Trump wins, it's the end of the world. The market is going to sell off. I think this is a classic story where one's politics gets in the way of actual fundamentals. Had George Soros actually studied the economic plan that Donald Trump was talking about, and that is rolling back regulations and cutting taxes, that would have been obvious that that's going to move earnings. What moves the stock market, right? Earnings. So he let his politics get in the way.
Do you think he made an emotional bet?
I do.
Which is striking because, you would think that the bottom line would be the most important thing for him. But I guess when you have billions and billions and billions, if you lose $1 billion, it's really not that big.
Hey, what's $1 billion between friends? There you go. Look, the bottom line is emotion does drive investing a lot, I mean, that happened when he made that huge bet with the British pound. Remember that? So many years ago.
Correct.
And he made $1 billion on that. But he allowed emotions to get the best of him, and there you go. He lost $1 billion. But, Martha, he's got a lot more billions left.
Yeah, exactly. His old pal Druckenmiller, I guess, made the opposite bet and made $1 billion, so that'll be interesting chatter over dinner.
It sure is.
Maria, thank you very much. Great to see you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I can't wait to watch you 7 o'clock on Monday night.
Thanks.
We'll miss you here,
Monday
though.
night. I know, I will too. But we'll be back. Thanks, Maria.
28 minutes past the hour. I was going to say that in a a little bit, but come on.
I stole your fire.
It's out there.
We'll
Thanks,
talk
Maria.
later.
In minutes, we should learn the results of a year-long investigation in one of the largest police forces in America. The death of a 17-year-old African-American received national attention. So what's at stake today? We will take you live to Chicago.
Plus, Vladimir Putin and Russia coming up again and again and again in the confirmation hearings throughout the week. It's really the biggest topic that has been pervasive here. Some of the nominees taking a very different tone, though, than Donald Trump, the president-elect. So what does that mean?
I think it's under the biggest attack since World War II, sir, and that's from Russia, from terrorist groups, and with what China is doing in the South China Sea.
At our midwinter sale, save up to 75% on all clearance when you take...
Justice getting ready to announce the results of a year-long investigation into the Chicago Police Department. The inquiry coming after a video showed a white police to the removal of the city's police superintendent. Mike Tobin live from Chicago with more on this. So, Mike, what do we expect from this report today?
Well, early information, Martha, is that this report is going to find, much like it did in Baltimore and Cleveland, systematic fault with the Chicago Police Department. And as you mentioned, this follows the videotape shooting of Laquan McDonald, a black young man shot by a white police officer. Leaks suggest the investigation will find fault with the training of officers, that officers unnecessarily escalate situations. It will suggest that investigation techniques, especially when investigating other officers, are biased, and civil rights, it will find, are routinely violated. started. Now, following the pressure brought by demonstrators, there has been a flurry of federal probes which are closing now at the end of the Obama administration. The police superintendent, fired in the wake of the demonstration, says this is an example of the Justice Department blowing with political winds and targeting police.
We're proud more civilians.
Not clear is the outcome. Other cities have signed what is called a consent decree, meaning they will submit to the reforms recommended by the Department of Justice. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel is yet to agree to what's known as an agreement in principle, essentially a statement that they agree with the findings in the probe. Martha?
All right. So far, in terms of the impact on policing, we've talked about that here. What do we expect to come out of this? And what are you seeing in Chicago from your reporting, Mike?
Well, one thing you can't ignore, Martha, here is the sharp spike in bloodshed. 762 people were killed this year. Thousands of them were shot. Now, Gary McCarthy, the former police superintendent out here, says that is because police are hamstrung. They're afraid to make stops. They're in fear for their jobs if they do, in fact, stop people. He says this notion that the stops need to reflect the overall demographics of the city flies in the face of common sense. In fact, it flies in the face of Supreme Court rulings that put the burden back on the police officers' training and judgment. He says if most of the violence is occurring in the minority neighborhoods, it stands to reason that the police trying to prevent that violence will stop mostly minorities. Martha?
Mike, thank you very much. We're going to have more on that coming up. We're going to talk to Gary McCarthy, the former police superintendent in Chicago. In the meantime, this week's Senate confirmation hearings showed several Trump nominees appearing to diverge from the president-elect on the topic of Russia and the threat that it poses. Watch some of this.
The most important thing is that we recognize the reality of what we deal with Mr. Putin. And we recognize that he is trying to break the North Atlantic Alliance.
I have no doubt that the discourse that's been taking place is something that Vladimir Putin would look at and say, wow, that was among the objectives that I had, to sow doubt among the American political community, to suggest somehow that American democracy was not unique.
Russia will have much greater respect for our country when I'm leading it than when other people have led it. You will see that. Russia will respect our country more.
Very interesting. So joining us now, Republican Senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. He is a member of the Senate Intel Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee as well. Sir, welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
You know,